we're going to have an interview here with Jenifer Skues. She's going to continue that conversation about what are the differences between men and women, gender differences that we need to be aware of if we would like to have better relationships with one another.
I just want to start with reminding people that there is no scientific discovery that's applicable to 100% of people 100% of the time. So this means both men and women can defy these generalizations, right? So even though we go, oh, women love to talk a lot more, you still have women who are more withdrawn depending on their personality. Or you have men who love to talk a lot more than women. So you get these percentages.
Usually they are called pastors.
Oh, yes.
I say, if you're a pastor and you don't like to talk, what are you doing here? Usually pastors love to talk, but, just talking from experience here.
Yeah. So it does vary, but there are definitely some differences, and these are neurological differences. So the functioning of men and women can vary, and this has a lot to do with relationships. What I expected in my marriage was unrealistic, because I'm expecting him to be like me in his capacity to communicate, to function, to do things, and it wasn't so. So this is where I found learning more about gender was really helpful in building healthy relationships, right? Because you change your expectations. Right?
Yes.
But you've still got to take into account that these differences can vary, and again, that they don't always fit that mould of gender differences, even though they can be neurological, right? For example, there are differences in the structure of the chemistry of male and female brains. These are all things that are scientifically shown. So that structure means that they communicate differently, they can have different goals in life, the way they see each other. So this is where we need to learn a little bit more about it. And even before we're born, these hardwired differences are in place before we've even been exposed to cultural, environmental or family influences. And I found there are mothers who tend to work more on feminizing their sons, because maybe, I've seen this happen. So the son might still be that boy who wants to get out there and play in the field, but mother's influence might change that.
Interesting.
So this is where you can get the variation of how we express our gender. And some people have had to suppress their gender because of family expectations, cultural, societal. So this is where it's we might be hardwired for certain differences, but how they're expressed and developed can vary. So, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yes, no, it does make sense. Yeah, it's hardly a one size fits all. But that being said, as you mentioned, we can see big brush strokes between male behavior, female behaviors, and characteristics that being aware of that will help us to calibrate our expectations and have better communication, better relationships. So tell me what is one gender difference another one that we need to be aware of in order to calibrate our expectations correctly?
Okay. Well, when it comes back to communication, they found that females tend to have verbal centers on both sides of the brain, whereas a male will have the verbal center on the left hemisphere, the left side of the brain. So this is where the left side of the brain is more that practical, rational, organizational side, whereas the right side is more access into the emotional centers, working on a more emotional level. So you can see how women, we look at women and they are more emotional, which drives men nuts sometimes because they're not necessarily that way oriented, right? They have a different range of emotions. Women have a broader range of emotions and feelings, and of course they expect the men to be the same as far as sensitivity goes. And, we look at ourselves and think others are like us, or we don't even consciously do it, but that's what we're expecting.
And I have a curiosity. I have a curiosity here. Do you think that this is by design? Do you think that God designed the female brain to be different in that way? For example, to be more sensitive to emotional things, and if yes, what would be the purpose? I don't know if you have maybe given too much thought about it, but this is a curiosity that I have.
That's a good point, because I believe that we were created with these differences as a complementary differences. And when you look, like, women give birth to children, and they actually have a more and again, this isn't, there are women who don't have this sensitivity, but a lot of women are more maternal and intuitive, and this is part of being able to raise children and be in touch with them on that emotional level, which men bond in a different way with their children. So this is where the fact that they have that emotional connection, like with that right side of the brain, and that verbal centre, so that means women can raise their children. Yet you can get a male, and this is where we think outside that box, that actually can function more on the female side in their sensitivity. And I don't know how the brain is wired, because as time goes on, we know we can develop those faults or differences. And there are some men who love being home and looking after the children and are very sensitive to their children. But the majority are women, and I believe women need to spend those first formative years with their children, and it's evident that they need to have that. The children need that connection on a consistent level, not being sent out to creches, and a lot of women won't like to hear that, but for their development and connection and developing their own capacity as in their gender, they need to be connected to that maternal mother that it's innate, it's inborn, that capacity.
Very interesting. What do you think, Lawson? Do you think that you have more of that caring sort of a personality, or you're more like the practical, hands-on thing? How would you define yourself?
I would say I'm on a scale somewhere. I'm on a spectrum somewhere in the middle of those ones. I think, like, I grew up with sisters, and I think they instilled, like, I have 3 sisters, no brothers, like, and I think that growing up instilled in me, an ability to read people's emotions in a way. And I think this lends to, like, the work that I do as a pastor and those kinds of things. The other side of it as well is that, like, I have a very strong, father figure, dad. I can pull an engine out of a motorbike and put it back in, and I do my own maintenance on my cars and all that kind of stuff. So it's like that hands-on practical side of it too. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I'm just kind of in the middle. Okay. I'm kind of floating around. Maybe some people are listening this morning and they're like, "Oh no, I sit more so this side, I sit more so this side," but I find myself very, very central. And my wife is similar to me. She's like, from the country kid, loves getting out there and getting dirty and getting in the mud and getting things sorted out and all that kind of stuff. But also, like, she's I think, very emotionally in tune and those kinds of things. And I think it's good in that way that we're kind of equally yoked in the way that we emotionally process. There are some differences, definitely, but yeah, we both kind of have that background.
Okay.
Well, cool. That's good. And it's a good balance. I mean, we want balance, but the interesting thing is in relationships, we often attract or are attracted to the opposite extreme. And I think some of that is because we can then learn to balance each other out. Yeah, it sounds like you, Lawson, have met your match and you both have that balance and work as a team, whereas often we marry the opposite and expect them to be like us or expect them to change once they're married. Those differences. So taking those differences into account help you to manage your relationships. For example, I find men, because their brain is more focused, and that's neurological, and that can be to the extreme being totally practical and, like reasoning all the time. But I find because of that focus, it's almost, they put the they put the blinkers on, that if you interrupt them, they really struggle with that because they can really only like to focus and only focus on one thing at a time.
Oh, this is me. Let me tell you, there's very few things that annoy me more when I'm speaking to someone on the phone and my wife says, oh, tell them this, tell them that. And like my brain is as if it's going into a short circuit. And I cannot see anything anymore. I just get like so confused. So I told my wife, please, don't talk to me while I'm talking to someone else. Cause I get completely thrown out of the tracks here.
Yeah. Explaining that to her, the experience for you is important. So she understands it's not personal. It's how your brain functions. And this is why it's good to know about these differences. But I found, like, in my own situation, that if I wanted my husband to do something and he was, say, in the shed busy, I'd go in, and if I would interrupt and ask a question and give him information, he'd just, I can't take all that in, and get quite upset. Whereas if I went in and said, when you've finished, come up, I want to ask you something, or we'll have a cuppa and a chat. And that was fine. That was all right, because he could continue with what he was doing, and when he'd finished, then we could sort it or discuss it. So learning to work with that, I think, is very important, because I used to feel quite hurt that he wouldn't listen to me, right? And not realising how much he needed to stay focused on the job he was doing.
Yes. Oh, that is so very interesting. That's so interesting, Jenifer. Look, we our interview time is shortly coming to a close, but in these last few seconds that we have, I'm wondering, is there any challenge that you have that you'd like for us to take home and practice it during this week?
Well, I think exploring, if you've got a computer, even books or whatever, go online and find out more about the gender differences and how and realising, remembering it's not always learned behaviour, it's moulded, but it's something that we're going to do. And if you understand the other person and the gender differences, it makes a much more compatible relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much, Jenifer. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom around the more gender differences that we need to be aware of if we want to build the best relationships we can.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
I am Scaffy. I'm here in